Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Scott. I'm excited to talk about Season 1, Episode 3 of Justified City Primeval. The episode title was Backstabbers. I've got some thoughts on this. I didn't love the episode. I didn't think it was terrible, but I definitely did not love it. I did not think it was as good as episodes 1 and 2. The way I structure these videos is I've just got 7 different things, at least in this video, that I want to talk about, highlight. I would love to hear what your thoughts are and your responses to what I have to say down in the comments below, but let's just jump into it. So my first thought, my first reaction was, we need less Willa. We need less Willa in the show, and I'm sorry to say it. I know some people said this after the first 2 episodes, especially Matt and Jess. They've got a great YouTube channel. You should definitely watch them. But I gave her a little bit of grace in those first 2 episodes, and now, honestly, I think I'm done with her. The first 10 minutes of the show, or of this episode, were, to me, completely brutal. She wants breakfast with her dad. She doesn't want the nuts and the soda cans at the vending machines, but then she doesn't order anything when they finally get to breakfast. She can't seem to understand that a murderer, Clement Mansell, went to see her at her hotel the night before, and that he could have killed her. He would have no problem killing her. But she doesn't seem to get this. I know she's 15 or 16, but it's pretty obvious, it's pretty basic to kind of understand that a murderer with no moral limitations would do something terrible to you. Then she takes her kind of teenage complaining to the next level, and she asks Raylan, am I even in your life? And honestly, Willa, with the murderer on the loose who's happy to hurt you to get back at your dad, no, you shouldn't be in his life. And if you're going to be like this, we don't want you in Raylan's life. The show has not done a good job of making Willa, making us like Willa, of making her an interesting character. And she's kind of taking this whole unhappy, moody teenage, girl trope to a ridiculous new level. I am not a fan. I hope we get less of her, or at least more interesting scenes with her in the future. Yes, I do know that she walks onto the plane at the end of the episode, but do we really think she's gone? Do we really think that she's going to keep on walking there and Raylan's not going to come after her? Because I am worried Raylan's going to chase after her and bring her back, especially after we saw that she said she would be willing to go to Graceland, Memphis, on their drive home back to Florida whenever this Detroit trip for Raylan wraps up. So I hope she's gone. She might not be. I don't think it's her fault. I don't even think it's the actor's fault. And I've got actually more thoughts on Willa and why this Raylan dynamic is not working for me, but that's going to be in a subsequent point. So that's my first point. The second thing that we learn is that things are just too easy for Sandy and Clement. They both get arrested along with Sweety towards the beginning of the episode for killing the judge, but there's no evidence because for some reason, and we're going to get to this in my next point, for some reason Sweety takes the gun and hides it on his own instead of letting the cops discover it. So that was a kind of nice, easy out for Sandy and Clement. And by the way, Sandy told Clement, and she lied to him and said that she threw away the gun in the river when we obviously know she planted it in the bar. So we'll get back to that later on in this season, but I just wanted to point that out right now. And then another thing that was way too easy for them is that Clement, he has a suspicion that some cops are tailing him, so he very smartly, just waits at a green light and all of the normal drivers go on past him, but the cops, obviously they're trying to tail him, so they can't go on past him like everyone else. So that was a smart move, but to me, things have been too convenient and too easy to get out of for both Sandy and Clement. So that's another reason why I didn't love kind of the dynamics of this episode. The third thing that I had on this episode is, what in the heck is Sweety doing with that gun? He kept the gun that Sandy stashed at his place, at his bar. And we had assumed that he had no idea where the gun was or what Sandy, or that there was a gun even there. But of course, we found out that he did know what Sandy was up to when she planted it, and he hid it from the cops. My question is, why not just give it to the cops or not even touch it? Since he knows that that gun is connected to Clement and it's connected to multiple murders. This especially didn't make sense to me because later on in the episode, he goes to Carolyn, the defense attorney, and he wants to turn in this gun to police to get Clement in jail. So I don't understand why he wouldn't just leave the gun there and not touch it. and let the cops find it in his bar. Now, you might say, Scott, he didn't want to help the police out, so that's why he hides the gun. He's obviously has a bad history with police, and he's skeptical of them, but that doesn't make any sense because he later went to Carolyn to turn in the gun or set up a deal to turn in the gun. Another thing that you might be able to say to me is that he held on to the gun because he was not sure if he was going to get framed or get in trouble for having the gun in his bar. But from my perspective, he doesn't have his fingerprints on it. He's not connected to the murders at all. And the cops did see Sandy go into the bar, and we think that the cops knew that she had some kind of, evidence or a gun on her. So it kind of stretches the imagination that Sweety would have gotten in trouble if they found the gun in his bar. So that whole storyline didn't make sense to me at all. I don't understand why Sweety just wouldn't let the cops find the gun in the bar and then boom, he doesn't have to worry about it at all. He doesn't have to try and seek out an immunity deal with Carolyn, and that would be the end of that. But again, this is partly making things too easy for some characters like Clement, and partly trying to drive the storyline where it wants to go. But it just didn't add up to me. So obviously you can tell there's a lot of these things that, I really didn't like in this episode. The fourth thought I have is, how dumb can they possibly make this Armenian guy? He might be one of the dumbest characters that I've seen on TV. His name is Skender. He's an Armenian guy. Sandy's been hooking up with him for some time. I'm not exactly sure how long. And he is completely smitten with her. He's got a $27,000 engagement ring that he wants to use to propose to Sandy, but Sandy says, hold up, you got to meet my brother, my overprotective brother who Clement pretends to be, before we go on with this proposal and marriage. Clement asked him a few questions about his life and got to know him a little bit, but after that, he just asked him about money. He asked him about the safe room, constantly, and that's all he's focused on. How are you making so much money without paying taxes? What else you got hidden down here? And yet, for some reason, and then he even told that, silly and funny story about their mom getting swept away in a tornado. Despite all of this, despite all of those red flags, Skender does not raise any suspicions at all. And until it's too late, until they're all in his, secret basement with Clement having his gun, Skender's gun. And at the end of the episode, he's likely dead. We got the police arriving on the scene. We will find out for sure in the next episode. But again, this was another miss for me, because how dumb can this guy possibly be when this sketchy quote-unquote brother is asking really invasive, personal, private questions about your money, your taxes, your home, all of this stuff. I can't believe no red flags went up. And again, that took away the enjoyment of the episode for me. The fifth thing that we learned is that Carolyn, the defense attorney, she's a hypocrite, and she's playing both sides of the law. As we said last week, and it was obvious, she is not squeaky clean. At the beginning of this episode, she's got a $106,000 lien on the house thanks to her ex-partner Lamar, and that's preventing her from applying to that judge position. That's fine, but she's also engaged in unethical practices for how she handles this gun situation with Sweety. Sweety wants to hire her, and in doing so would hurt her other client, Clement. And so doesn't she have the ethical obligation to decline helping out Sweety because of the clear conflict of interest that's going to present with Clement? Regardless of if she knows that Clement is guilty or not, and we know he's guilty, and strong suspicions tell us that Caroline thinks he's guilty as well, Clement is her client, and she has an obligation, ethical and legal obligation, to put his interest first. But yet she's telling Sweety to turn in the gun, which she knows is going to harm Clement, and put the quote-unquote cracker away. And so that's a clear ethical lapse, and it's a legal lapse, which, again, we might see come back later on in the show. She's also a hypocrite, though, because on the one hand, she tells Raylan that he needs to get Clement the right way, i.e. don't beat him up. But on the other hand, she's acting against the best interest of one of her clients, Clement, by helping Sweety get that immunity deal. So she's hypocritical, she's unethical, which, hey, it's great. It's good drama. I do like her character so far, so we'll keep on seeing what she does and where she ends up on which side of the law. My sixth point is that, does anyone actually want Raylan to change? In this episode, we see the Raylan that we know and love, absolutely love. Like in the original series, he chooses to put his work over family, much to Willa's disappointment in this episode. But for Raylan, it's not even a close call. Yes, he did ask to get removed from this case in the previous 2 episodes, as well as in this episode, but he doesn't really put up a fight, and he kind of goes along with it easily. And when Willa says, I need you to spend more time with me, you're ignoring me for work, that doesn't even register to him. It doesn't even register. Another area where we see resemblance of the old Raylan from the original series is at the end of the last episode. He goes too far with the criminal Clement. He beats him up, and he should not have taken that route at that situation, but he's done that countless times, and it's a big part of the reason why the show is called Justified, because Raylan justifies his actions, and he justifies it in terms of the legality of what he's doing. But here's my question for you. Does anyone actually really truly want Raylan to become a family man? Does anyone actually want to see Raylan the husband of the year or the father of the year? And yeah, I know he's divorced, but you get my point. Does anyone actually want to see this guy become a reformed cop who only plays it by the books? Who in their right mind would actually watch that show? And maybe that's why this whole Willa scene and plot line is so off for me, and why it annoys me so much, because it's almost preordained who Raylan is and who he's going to be. Because if she gets her way, he turns into this family man, he plays it by the book. This show is completely over. No one's watching that show. And I don't want this show to be over. I don't want Raylan to dial down his antics. His antics are why we watch. And so Timothy Oliphant has said he hopes we get a season 2. He hopes it gets picked up. I do too, which means we can't expect Raylan to change his ways in a meaningful way, which also means all of these requests from Willa, honestly, they're kind of pointless, and we already know how it's going to end up. So I would rather us just remove those scenes from the episode and focus in on other parts where there's at least a little bit more intrigue and mystery as to what's going to happen. So my 7th point is I'm just going to rate the show. I think Willa's storyline and her nagging at Raylan made me roll my eyes. I thought the Armenian guy was unreasonably stupid and naive. I thought Sweety's decision to hide Clement's gun, but then have an about face and then want to turn it in, as well as Sandy and Clement having far too easy of a time getting away with their schemes and their plotting against the police and these people that they're trying to con. All of that really detracted my enjoyment of the episode. I still do love Raylan. I think the dialogue's been good, probably not as good as the original Justified, so I'm still enjoying it. Probably didn't like this episode as much as the first 2, so I'll give this a 7 out of 10. I am hopeful that we're going to have less Willa, more action later on, and a lot of these kind of storylines are going to tie them together and do so in an interesting way. So I hope you like this video, and I will see you next time. Bye.